All right, welcome everybody to the February meeting of the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association, the GHFL. It's good to see this group of people. We hopefully will not be going too long, although I'm sure that there are some great discussions to be had for this meeting. You've all received the agenda. So let's go ahead and get started, which is what we normally do with just approval of the minutes. This is for January 2022. Does anybody have any, does anybody want to move to accept the minutes? And once we have a move and a second, then we can go ahead and discuss any changes.
I'll move to accept the minutes as they are.
Thank you, Sherry. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Linda, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Not hearing any suggestions for changes. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Say aye.
Aye.
And raise your hand. All opposed? Thumbs down. All right, not hearing any objections. Abstain, anybody? Nope. Okay, minutes passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item is board emails exchanged this month. I don't remember that we had any emails being exchanged of any importance this month. If somebody can remember anything that needs to be shared, please remind me. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. All right, not hearing anything, we'll go to one of the most important things, which is talking about Bud Clark. I'm sure all of you are aware that Bud's lived a long life and started it in this neighborhood and was very instrumental in a lot of things that make this neighborhood great. The bar being one of them, but he's made the whole city just a wonderful place to live. And I just like to give the opportunity for everyone to talk about their memories of Bud and what he meant to them, some funny stories. And I'll go ahead and start with a little bit. So Tracy just jumped on the line. So when Tracy wrote the book about the neighborhood association, or I'm sorry, about the neighborhood, about the Goose Hollow neighborhood history, we thought it would be really interesting to have as part of the pictures in the book, some of those pictures that are in the Goose Hollow Inn. And so I guess as the man, I was volunteered to go in with power tools and take the screwdriver and just actually unscrew them from the walls. And there was, I think, a big outline where those pictures were, because they probably hadn't been removed for decades. And it was really neat to be able to see those pictures up close when they weren't hanging on the wall and to have them appear in the book. And Bud was just so wonderful and giving for this process of putting the book together and sharing stories that he had about the neighborhood. I think they were invaluable to the book. And I just want to pass it on to Tracy if she has kind of more to share about that whole process and her interaction with Bud. Tracy, we can't hear you.
We can't hear anything.
Tiffany, could you hear what I had to say?
Yes, I can hear you, but it's really faint. I have to really lean into my computer. So I don't know if it's my computer. Is anyone else experiencing really quiet voices?
I'm hearing Scott, but I couldn't hear Tracy at all.
Okay.
I don't know what Tracy said.
Well, while we're waiting for Tracy to kind of log back on, would somebody else like to present a story? Maybe Alan? You've known him for quite some time.
Alan, you're muted.
Sorry, I was new to the neighborhood.
in the 1980s. So, but Bud Clark's mayoral campaign and success were just like the whole neighborhood had been discovered. We felt like we were the center of the earth, and something wonderful had happened, and we had all been elevated and elected. So I didn't know him real well at that time. Gradually got to know him better, and of course I've just written an article about that will appear in the next edition. But he was many things, but at heart he was a great neighbor.
Thank you, Alan. Tracy? Uh-oh, can't hear you. You might have to come down and use my computer. And there she goes. Somebody else? Jerry, I know that you've been around since the 40s, so. I just need to unmute.
You're muted, Jerry.
Sorry about that. I met Bud in, I think, 1965. And it was very interesting because, no, early 1966, not long before the Spotton House got bought out by the Portland Development Commission. But a friend of mine took me to this place that he knew near Portland State. I was a student, and my friend was Joe Uris, who had been befriended by Bud, and the Spotton House was clearly the best watering hole anywhere near Portland State, which was a lot smaller place than it is now. And the interesting thing is that as I recall, Joe introduced me to Bud as a great bartender and an ex-Marine, because I had very recently returned to the States and to school from Vietnam. And that was my my introduction to Bud. By the way, Joe was also the student body president at Portland State in the next year, and was frequently maligned by the mainstream press in Portland as being Portland State's communist. So it was an interesting bunch of people that simply had respect for each other because they were interesting, very principled, and very earnest about their love of community. Later, in the early 1980s, I'd been living in Goose Hollow for 10 or 15 years at that time, and had become aware of the neighborhood association, and decided to run for the neighborhood board. I think it was 1982, 3, something like that. And the person on the list of candidates that I was running against was Bud Clark. I lost. So he was a Goose Hollow board member.
Jerry, I'm curious, at that time, was it difficult to get enough people to run for board positions? Or was there just an overabundance of people wanting to serve in that position?
I wouldn't say that there was an overabundance, but it was at the time that the Multnomah Club was proposing its first parking garage. And there were a number of people that were attracted to the board that either lived on that block and a half, or were living in this this area of Kings Hill. And there weren't many people that were from the further reaches of Goose Hollow. And that was my my claim to running, because I was living in what we know as Gander Ridge at the time on Harrison Street.
See, interesting. Hey, Tracy, can we hear you now?
Sorry about that. So it was just such a joy to work with him. When I first started working with him on the Goose Hollow book, I asked him to write the foreword. And at the time, I didn't know that in the late 30s, he lived in Goose Hollow, and then moved later on into Northwest Portland. But just him reminiscing about growing up here, picking the wild sweet peas and eating them, climbing up all the public stairs. And then I think he and Scott had just such a great time the day that you took the power tools to the Goose Hollow Inn. There's about 20 pictures in the book that are directly from, scanned in from pictures of the Goose Hollow Inn. But I credit him in my book, which I don't think a lot of people realize, with the fact that when he named Ann's Tavern, which he purchased in the 60s, the Goose Hollow Inn, he did it in order to remind people they had started forgetting that it used to be called Goose Hollow. And he loved the name and he wanted to remind people about the name. And so I credit him in the book with saving the name of the neighborhood. And it was just kind of generically called, Southwest Portland. And if people thought of Goose Hollow, they just thought of like a couple of blocks around, where the Goose Hollow Inn is right now. So it's just wonderful to me that he loved it so much and fought for the neighborhood name. And then of course was such a civically minded person, as is his family, as is the Goose Hollow Inn and the Hoff. And it feels like our community when I'm at the Hoff or the Goose. And I just love what the Clarks have given to our neighborhood and what that community, it's all about community. And that's what I really love about my memories of him. We once had him over for dinner and I made a really bad risotto, and I keep thinking about that. Like, it was a good risotto, but then it cooked too long and it got really soupy, and he was incredibly gracious about having some very soupy risotto. Those are my memories.
Well, Tracy, thank you so much for sharing. That is such a lovely story. I just love Bud. And, we met him when we first moved here, and in 2013, we came here actually on a lark, Daniel, to get our son, who, you all know that Daniel's on the autism spectrum, and we were trying to find a place where he would be happy, and we fell in love with Portland. He did. So we came here sight unseen and stayed in the Collins Circle for about 6 months, moved into the Vista St. Clair, and got to know Bud, who hung out in the lobby over there, along with a lot of really interesting people that have, some of them are very well known, in fact, but some of them are just ordinary people. At any rate, he made us feel so at home, and just Tracy's feeling about the community. I mean, he really, he made the Vista St. Clair when we were there. I mean, he was in the lobby, he spoke to everyone, he made everyone feel at home. He got us to, he introduced us to City Club, he introduced us to, what else, Steve? We're just so many different things. And we ended up, the Thirsters, and then the other thing, which was the First Thursday, which we joined, and we're still in that same group. And a lot of them are the who's who of who made Portland cool. And a number of them, we actually made friends, and they've already passed on. And I cried for days when we lost Bud, because, and he made us feel so special. I feel fortunate, he came over to our new place when we moved here, and we had a chance to visit him at his place on the waterfront, and he really loved it, because he would sit by the window with some binoculars and he would watch. Did he say there were dolphins, Steve?
Yeah.
Dolphins, and he would watch that. He would watch the birds, and He had a favorite heron rookery that he watched across on Ross Island. He just had such a zest for living. He just enjoyed his life immensely. And just, I can't remember him, saying anything about anybody that I know in a negative way. He was kind to everyone. The only exception, I guess, was the guy he ran against. They called him Ivancy. His name was Ivancy, I think. What was his name? Ivancy the Terrible, or something like that. Was the only other time I ever heard him say anything negative about anybody. And I just adore him. I adore the Clark family, and I just feel so honored and to have been just a small part of his amazing life.
Thank you, Sherry. That was wonderful. Does anybody else have anything to share?
I own the house just behind the Goose Hollow Inn, so I'm there all the time. I'm at the Hoff House and at the Goose Hollow Inn, and buy my flowers there at the Goose Hollow Flower Shop. So I've been in there a lot. And apparently part of his legacy is that the Goose Hollow Inn is a legendary hub of political discourse. And you can see some very interesting characters having policy arguments and over many, many beers. But anyway, clearly he has a legacy in political discourse at that location.
Hey, Dave, so just to let you know that the phrase political discourse has now been ruined. So I'm not sure that we can use that appropriately anymore because of what's been going on in the news. So I'm sure his version of political discourse is different than what we saw on January 6th, which apparently, according to one political party, is considered to be political discourse. So I'm sure you meant his particular brand of political discourse.
Right, it was pre-January 6th discourse.
Yes.
Can I just interject something? I have to say this about Bud, about the Vista St. Clair. In 2015, when Trump was running for president, he would sit in the lobby, and we were just frightened to death. And I just couldn't believe that people supported him. And we shortly went off to Israel, and we learned that Hillary had not won. It was amazing. But I guess where I'm going with that is that Bud was an avid reader and an avid historian. And he gave sort of a mini history lesson in the lobby and was talking about the dangers of Donald Trump. And I have to say, unfortunately, that everything that he predicted came to pass. I'm sure it's not something that he would have wanted, and we certainly don't want it. But he was really quite an avid historian. He just devoured books.
I have something to add. Sherry, you mentioned his zest for life, and I don't know if you all know this, but I'm quite an avid cyclist, and every once in a while I would see a cyclist come zooming by my house, and it was Bud Clark on his e-bike. Because I was told that he had to get an e-bike because he was mad he couldn't bike home anymore, and he was well into his 80s. When he was riding his e-bike by my house, and that always gave me a chuckle.
Did you get a chance to see his helmet that looked like a watermelon and was put out by a company called Nutcase?
Yeah.
Just cracked me up.
Yeah, it's like he'd ride by and I go, wait, whoa, that was Bud Clark.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. I first came to Portland in 1978 because I was doing a national survey on emergency preparedness for nuclear power plants. And I came to the Trojan nuclear power plant. I was talking to the state of Washington and Oregon about the Trojan nuclear power plant. And everybody informed me, don't worry about that, worry about Mount St. Helens. And 2 years later, it exploded. So I was always talking to Bud about the U.S. Conference of Mayors and mutual assistance agreements in towns and townships. And he knew quite a lot about it, and even sponsored one here in Portland at one time. So, so I appreciated his insight, and also to the structure of the city with the council members. Instead of having a city manager, they have a different form, which is up for debate to change. But he always insisted that the way they have it now is the best. I also wanted to say in the interview, I'm reading from Israel Today, what my daughter said, that he made Ashkelon a sister city of Portland when they had only 2 sister cities. But when he left office, he had 9. And he explains how he believed that the sister city program would really promote peace all over the world. And the article then quotes how Oregon is benefiting from Israel's technology in drip water and desalination, and Israel is benefiting because Portland really knows how to grow trees, and they could use a lot of trees there. I could go on, but I think that you get the idea.
Lovely. Anybody else?
If you want to see, there's a really special moment to me when Bud and I did our reading for the book at Powell's in 2011 when it came out. And so I have it on my YouTube channel, and it's just wonderful to see him reminiscing, and you can hear him talking about Goose Hollow for yourself. It's lovely.
Well, and thank you, Tracy, for having the foresight to realize what a treasure he was, and to document this in the book.
Well, you know, he, as several people have mentioned, he was quite the historian himself, and the pictures, some of the photos that are on the walls of the Goose Hollow Inn, you know, I spent hundreds of hours at the Oregon Historical Society, and those are very unique pictures, and that show a slice of Goose Hollow at a time that even the Oregon Historical Society doesn't have. So I really appreciated his time as a historian of our neighborhood, and he clearly loved it so much. And it was just a joy for me to be able to work with him, and we got to be good friends. And I really loved, you know, when he gave we gave, you know, like 4 or 5 different presentations together, and the crowds just were still, all these years after he was mayor, the crowds were just filling the room with adoration and love for him. It was beautiful to see.
That's wonderful.
Well, I just want to pass along, you know, our condolences to Rachel and her family. I know it's still must be very raw, but hopefully it's very helpful learning just how much we appreciate what he's, you know, who he is as a person, what he's done for the neighborhood, and what your family has done for the neighborhood. And I just want that to kind of come across. And if you would like to say something, if you feel like sharing a story or something like that growing up, like, you know, how many times he smacked you on the bottom or something like that, things we wouldn't normally know, I'm all ears. I just like to hear it.
Well, I want to just thank everybody for all the nice, all the condolences, the flowers and the cards and all the words. Just recently come out of my shell, so I'm not feeling super duper talkative about everything. And actually, I was joining the meeting tonight, not because I even knew you were going to say anything about my dad, but just like, I really need to get involved. I should just go in there and go to a meeting and listen in. So it was kind of a surprise that that all these words were said. He would say that I think he's really proud of this neighborhood. I mean, everything comes down to the grassroots, right? And that as surprisingly how close to the inner core is, the downtown core, and with big buildings going up and everywhere, there's so much true generous spirit towards the community, and it's all feels so very real. Like really people feel genuinely caring about having this neighborhood where people can walk down to the corner tavern, or that trees will be saved, that there won't be sky rises in the middle of everything, that will maintain our views. It's a very quaint corner of Portland that deserves to be preserved. And I think he was just proud of everything that Goose Hollow Foothills League has done, the book that Tracy wrote, his coffee group, and all the grassroots efforts that everybody has done. Way back in the day, before Portland had those little yellow boxes, well, my dad is always a community organizer, from helping to start the neighborhood newspaper to being in the first round of the neighborhood association, both in the Northwest and in Goose Hollow. But he deep down was very, very social though too, as you know. He liked parties, and there were always some good parties going on, people hanging out on the porches and talking and drinking beer and doing some other things. And one of the big parties he'd have every year was called Recycle Sunday. And the beer trucks would come in and block off the road. They got tons of boxes out and recycling bins. And it was a big neighborhood party that was just focused right there on 19th in between Jefferson and Madison. And we have pictures from it. And people would bring all their goods to recycle, and they would this would be the place where they would organize people to do that. So I always thought that was pretty neat that he would spend a lot of effort and time getting that together. Maybe Jerry was even at a couple of those and would remember one or two of the last ones that were held. Aside from that, we weren't supposed to go in there for the most part. It was always a real smoky tavern. It was down home tavern, just the traditional smoky place. He would pull up our Volkswagen bus on the side there. There were 4 of us kids, and he would slide open the door, and we probably spent too many hours there in the parking lot, kind of waiting for Dad to get his work done. There were a lot of cheese specials and glasses of root beer that were shared. Some close calls with some weirdos and strange events. I remember one time he parked us on the pointing towards Jefferson, and my brother Nick decided to unleash. We always had Volkswagen buses growing up, always Volkswagen buses, and they never had the center seat. So this was before seat belts. That was so he could go to cash and carry and pile all the groceries in there and use it as the transportation for the produce and such. So not only were we not locked down, but we were just kind of like this wild little group of kids there. And he would, and one time Nick let go of the parking brake, and we started to glide right down towards Jefferson Street. And it was even busy back then. And I tried to like push my foot on the brake and all that. And one of the regulars, Del Marshall, jumped in and saved us. And so what was really cool about growing up there was not just a dad that had that brought us with them to work, but the whole community of people that were always around there ready to jump in and save the Clark kids when needed. That's not a very good story, but
I love that story.
It's marvelous, Rachel. I could listen to you all night, really.
Well, anyway, the community, the world around us keeps changing. You know, development happens and it's not always fun, and we're not all happy about everything, but we've seen a lot of changes. I remember that structure that looked like a castle across the street, and it was, I think, owned by Eric Ladd at one point. I can't remember exactly what the purpose of it was, but It was a fun place to go. And actually there are remnants of it at the, in that area, on 20th. There are some steps and things in there. But anyway, it looked like a castle and we would go over there and play all the time. And before Collins Circle was there, there was Lu Yan's Chinese restaurant that we would go have Chinese food, and there was a car wash, and so much has changed, so much will continue to change. And I guess we have to all accept that, because even when we're wishing that things weren't erected or weren't torn down, things go against our will. So he would be proud that he is proud of everybody fighting for those things and for the trees and for the neighborhood to continue to create a spirit of community. And actually back to, I think it was Jerry's point and Tracy's point, is that was what he wanted. He said the whole point of having a restaurant or a pub down in there is that creating a place for community. That's not an advertisement, because we can create community anywhere. The Legends has community. The coming together around Block 7 is a community. So keep up the good work, you guys. Thank you for all your sweet words and everything.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right.
Sorry I blabbed too long.
Oh,
No,
we love it. We
I
love
could
hearing
listen
those
to you all
stories.
night. It's wonderful hearing these stories, and it's just, I have so many wonderful memories of your dad, and I'm just so grateful that for your whole family, and for having the Goose Hollow Inn and the coffee shop and your involvement in the community. It's just been priceless.
Well, and that says something about, as we get older, all those friends that you create up through the end. I mean, he really loved that coffee group and the people that he's met just in the last 10 years and developed friendships with. And it's really meaningful to continue to do that, to keep making friends. So we appreciate all the love that you gave to my dad. And by the way, we did lay him to rest this last weekend. We had a nice private ceremony, and the chapels are still where we decided to bury him and have the service. They allowed about 40 people. So with family, it was almost full, an extended family. But there will be some sort of a large thing probably in mid-May. Everybody can participate in.
Good to know. Well, I think that's, Rachel, your discussion of the importance of community is actually a great segue to our next topic, which is the small grants membership drive that we have actually received money for now. And I'll let Catherine kind of tell you all the good news and what our next steps are and how we're going to capitalize on it. Catherine?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Scott. Rachel, you certainly didn't wax on too long. I love those stories. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, so we got some great news. Linda and I heard this week, it's blending together, that we were approved for $1,800 for our postcard mailing that we submitted. So that leaves us, which is awesome, just such a wonderful amount to give to us to get this project off the ground. So that leaves us $375 that are unaccounted for at this time, so we can kind of talk about that. And their feedback was really wonderful. It was pretty minimal, actually. It was really, let me just pull up the email here. The feedback was really that they wanted some language on the back of the postcard that was kind of an offer or an ask, something to get people motivated to go to the website. And I know Linda and I briefly talked about this last time before we knew we were approved, and we were going to kind of wait until we found out about doing some sort of a drawing for a Goose Hollow flag or a banner, and that the Goose Hollow Foothills League would put the cost of that. That was worked into the grant. So yeah, so since we've been approved, it's kind of are we willing to put up the remainder of the money to get this mailing going? And then also, anybody has any language or anything that you want to add to the back of the card that you think might be helpful in order to meet that requirement, we would love your feedback. And again, this has been a long time project for anybody who on this call who isn't aware. It started last year by somebody else who was on our board who unfortunately wasn't able to finish working on it. So I picked it up, and then Linda joined and she helped pick it up as well. So it's been a long time coming, and I'm excited to get this going. Yeah, so that's the good news.
Do you want to spend some of that $375 to up the award prize?
The award prize? Like, what do you mean?
Well, you can win the banner possibly, right? The Goose Hollow banner. I mean, you have some extra money, and you already have enough money for all the postcards to go through the whole neighborhood. I was just wondering what were you thinking about doing with the remainder of the money that would promote the.
Oh, no, I think what she was saying is that the $1,800 covers most of the expected costs, that we have to vote for the extra money. So we don't have extra money. It's just that, and I apologize, we haven't even given the treasurer's report. Stephen is on the other end of the planet, moving his child into university in Australia. So we get the treasurer's report, but it essentially is the same as what it was in the past. So let me just go ahead and state the numbers, which is the GHFL checking account is $1,432.82. The GHFL savings account is $5,125.89, and bottle drop is about $106 right now. So there's more than enough funds to cover this important kind of shortfall that we have. There's a 300 and how many, $50 or something like that. So I assume, Catherine, that you're going to float a motion, maybe even today, about cost. Okay.
Yeah, David, I'm sorry I didn't say that clearly. Yeah, the cost of the application amount that we applied for was $2,175. That's the cost to get everything mailed out from start to finish, sans the banner or sans the drawing or prize, whatever that might be. Bridget, you have a question? Or a high five? I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
I'll take
I was
both.
gonna say, so excited this project's come together. I love that it's a local artist, that it's a high school student that produced that piece. And I was inspired before in honor of my grandfather, who drew cartoons for the Oregonian, to contribute. So I'd be happy to contribute a little bit for a banner or something if we can't come up with it. And then also we did deposit 2 small checks that Scott mentioned. Just via the app, and they were, I think, less than $10, and they came from Kroger, but that's just on the record, and it'll probably be mentioned on the next treasurer's report as well. I just did that in the absence of the current treasurer. Over.
Great, thanks, Bridget.
So Catherine, I'm just going to invite a motion.
Yeah, great.
Make up the anticipated shortfall. So go ahead and make it. We'll get a second, and then we'll pass it because I'm anticipating passing that.
Great. Make a motion for sure.
For which?
Sorry, excuse me. I'll make a motion to cover the cost, the remaining balance, to get the postcard mailing out and going, which is $375.
All right, good. Do we have
Sorry, is that mailing nonprofit? Have you talked to the mail house about that?
Yes, excuse me. Sorry. Yes, Bridget. Yes, they have all that.
Sorry, I'm like crazy about the postage. It's what I do, and we'll save a lot of money if we go nonprofit. I just want to make sure and that's just like the size of the card.
Yes, I think so. I definitely recall, it's so funny. This has been going on for so long. I've had so many conversations with them over the course of a year and a half. I'll actually send you also, Bridget, just so you can see the invoice. And I think you'll see it on the invoice on there, that we have a discount for the nonprofit status. Is that what you're referencing? Yeah, it's on there.
That's great. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Maybe Linda?
I second the motion.
Okay. All right. Any discussion about how great an idea this is? Okay. Let's go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Scott, I was just going to say there probably does need to be some discussion, or Linda and I will maybe come together and come up with it, but about what the action is that we're going to ask people to do. Is it that they go to our website because Goose Hollow Foothills Leagues is willing to give a banner or a flag or something along those lines? And then what is the budget for that? I know Bridget just kindly offered to cover that, and I'd be happy to contribute as well, just to get this up and going and have it go out. But if Goose Hollow Foothills League is also willing to contribute to whatever that prize kind of thing is, that would be great as well.
Yeah, and another thing to add is there was an idea to advertise the date of Goose Holidays. Is that what it was? So if, if, if you want to have that on the postcard, that's going to sort of determine the timeline.
Right,
Yeah.
some of the ideas that we discussed last year when we thought we were sending the card out is that we would have information on the neighborhood picnic and Goose Holidays, both. And that in order to, because, people usually will have a postcard, then kind of toss it in the trash or something like that. Something to encourage them to keep the postcard around is that maybe that postcard would serve as their ticket into the neighborhood picnic. So they'll just kind of keep it around, maybe tacked to the wall or, magnetized to the fridge or something like that. So I suspect that after we vote on increasing, kicking in extra into the budget for this so that we can get it done, that we'll probably vote on maybe establishing some sort of subcommittee to determine what both the prize would be and the information that would be on the back of the card, and then the timeline or something like that. And you guys, Catherine and Linda, since you're kind of head of this process, if you want it to be just yourselves, it can be. If you want some additional help, then we can kind of expand it to, an additional, some other subcommittee members. So you tell me what you want.
I think, and Linda, you can kind of chime in and let me know what you think about this. I think just in the interest of not overcomplicating it, because it has been kind of a complicated process in the past, maybe we can have anybody who's interested in providing feedback reach out via email to Linda and I and share with us what your thoughts are, and we'll kind of harness that together and come up with something for the back. So we don't, get that kind of chefs in the kitchen kind of thing going. Linda, does that sound okay to you?
It sounds great.
Okay, good. Well, so we have a motion on the table. Let's go ahead and just vote this through. So all in favor of Goose Hollow Foothills League paying an additional, $357 and some odd cents?
$375.
$375. Kicking that into the amount of the grant to bring it up to the total cost so that we can do the mailing and that does or does not cover the banner?
That does not cover the banner.
Does
That would
not.
be extra. Yeah.
So all in favor of kicking in that extra money, raise your hand.
Can I bring something up? Why don't we just make the motion for the extra money at the same time? Do we know how much that might be? Like another $100?
I mean, I think 100. I don't know exactly how much that would be, but I feel like $100 should cover whatever kind of prize is out there. Maybe even a couple prizes.
So I believe a single banner is like $150 just to
Oh,
I know,
Okay.
I know.
okay.
But it's possible we might have one to give. And it's possible that we can give, I think I have an extra street sign cap or something like that. That
You
might be
had different
something else.
sizes of banners, Scott.
Perfect.
Right. So that's just the current size, whatever it is, 4 foot by 2.5 foot or something
Yeah.
like that.
And you also listed a smaller size. I was thinking those would be appropriate. Okay.
So do you want to amend the motion to add the cost of kind of an anticipated prize? Or
Yeah.
maybe not to exceed amount?
Yeah. That seems to make sense.
So maybe $150. So the total
Extra?
So the total would be $525.
$525.
Okay. All right. New motion, $525. All in favor?
I do have a question for you, unrelated to this vote.
Okay.
But still on topic.
Let's just get the vote away.
Yeah.
All opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing kind of a unanimous vote here of those online. Am I mistaken? If not, speak up. Okay, motion passes. All right, Catherine.
Great. Just one of the other questions, and then I know this got brought up last year, and it was challenging because of COVID, but is that it felt risky to put dates on the postcard for things like the picnic and things like Goose Holidays. And I think that the first time around, part of the reason it got dropped off is because we just kept waiting for those dates and we didn't quite know. And that, I think it was like June, July last year when we figured out it was going to be in October. So there is an element of like, how long do we wait to get this out and get something out and going, given the circumstances?
It's true. Yeah. And frankly, we don't even know if there's going to be another surge of, Zeta
Right.
version of COVID. So we don't know.
I propose, Catherine, that we just go through and complete the design, put a potential placeholder, and, get all the ducks in the row. And at that point, we can make a decision whether to include that stuff or not.
Yeah.
What do
And
you-
Yeah.
you could also use evergreen copy, something along the lines of entry to Goose Hollow Day picnic held every summer 2022. So that way we aren't kind of held down by a date. We've given them a rough idea of when it is, and they know to hang on to it, and they'll want to check their email so that they can get that date.
Right.
Yeah. Love it. Great.
Okay.
Good ideas.
Thank you. Yeah. Great ideas. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Moving on, Tiffany and Laurie, if you want to give some discussion on homeless encampments in Goose Hollow, some safety issues that we may have missed because we didn't have a safety meeting this month, but there's a lot to discuss, I'm sure. So take it away.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I want to say thank you to Scott. He sent out a few hyperlinks in the agenda if you want to follow along or just refer to them on a later time slot. But I'm covering the update on the homeless encampments for Goose Hollow. I put a link in there for Mayor Wheeler's emergency declaration February 5th at 3 p.m. declaring that any unsheltered folks living among major freeways, highways, roadways need to move out of the way safely to another area where they are safer. I also sent a link on the Willamette Week article that you could click on, but for reference, they stated the reason for the emergency order was there was a report by the Portland Bureau of Transportation that in regards to traffic related deaths, that in 2021, 70% of the 27 pedestrians that were killed were unsheltered people living on roadways. So please refer to that article. Sorry, the Timber Stadium is texting me at this moment. They are concerned too about this new emergency order, and I'll explain that as well. The other link that I would like to refer to is the Hucker link. That link I gave you actually shoots you directly to the part on the website that shows you which camps are now being posted because of this emergency order. I went ahead and looked on there to see if there was any postings for the Goose Hollow neighborhood, and so far not. But I have to tell you, they started posting immediately within hours, it felt like, from that emergency order from Mayor Wheeler. Roadways, Burnside's already been, a lot of those people been, they hate the term swept, but moved over to get off the major roadway. And so when I think about Goose Hollow, I have some grave concerns. Goose Hollow is kind of sandwiched in between major freeways like the 405, the Highway 26, and majority of our unsheltered folks living in our area of the boundary lines of Goose Hollow are on the freeways. If you see it, right? 13th, 14th, Montgomery, Burnside. And Jefferson is a major road, maybe, I'm not sure. I did send a link that showed what they considered major roadways. I don't know if Jefferson was considered that, but it might be, I'm not sure. It's a TriMet area. So so what's gonna happen now is every week areas will be posted for major roadways and people will be relocated. Sadly, why I bring it up is they will probably be relocated 1 block from the major roadway. So everyone you see on the 405, when you're driving down, they're going to get displaced into our Goose Hollow neighborhood. Why do I know that? It's because people don't have cars and vehicles to help relocate themselves. They probably will be offered shelter options. I've heard that through the grapevine. I don't know if that will reality happen for our unsheltered folks, and what we're already seeing the northwest quadrant, Old Town, NATO, Burnside, are already getting cleared out of the way, and the people are coming into the neighborhood actually itself and creating more of a dense situation. So when it comes to Goose Hollow, I gravely worry that we will have 80 tents that will come inside the core of Goose Hollow. And so I would hope that our elected officials would have an emergency plan of sheltering in place, because I don't think that the solution is to just move someone a block next to businesses and residentials as well, and or the Timber Stadium, right? If you move them off Burnside, they come to the stadium. It really disrupts the community, the neighborhood itself, but also it doesn't give the unsheltered a solution. It just pushes them out of the way. Right. And it also doesn't take in consideration that there's a loss of life regardless of where that tent is at. There's people dying on our sidewalks every single day. So we don't have the data to say what happens on non-major roadways. So I'd say please keep an eye on the Hucker website, because they will get posted soon. I did see them out there off of 13th by Outside In taking pictures and getting ready. Think about it, everyone. 13th Avenue is fully loaded. And what's kind of scary is, yeah, those tents are inches away from the roadway right there. So they will come into the Goose Hollow neighborhood. Where else are they going to go? So I want to also, in that same conversation, say that A Home for Everyone did the point of time counts this month for our unsheltered folks. What I did see when they did come through is I saw a lot of tents and people moved away for a minute and then they disappeared. Some stayed for the counts, and then some just disappeared, and I couldn't believe it. It was like magic. I was like, suddenly motorhomes are leaving, and then they did come back after the point and count was done. So I was like, oh, there's the people coming back. So I have to say, I am interested in that point of time count. It will come, I think, in June. Don't quote me. I thought they said June when we're going to get those final counts, but we all know that it's representative of Multnomah County, not Goose Hollow. So I'm going to get back out there here in the next few weeks to do the Goose Hollow unsheltered tent counts, and I'll come back to all of you with the reality of our tent counts are. We haven't done one in the last few weeks, but I was like, why would I do one right in the middle of a point in time count, right? So let's let them do their thing, and then I will swoop in with our neighborhood folks, and we know are unsheltered, so we'll figure it out. And also, when I do come back, I'll probably tell you where they're now living after they're not on our major roadways. And I'm sure many of you will probably reach out and say, hey, they're right in front of our door or our street now. And I'll say, now we have to get serious about advocating for actual locations for people to safely relocate to. Meanwhile, I want to, hey, Scott, is it okay if I just go quickly into the safety transportation meeting? Oh, wait, I can't hear you. Or does anybody have any questions about this?
I was going to say, please do, Tiffany, since we didn't have a safety meeting, just certainly an overview of issues that you would have liked to have covered would be enough.
You know what? Actually, I've just forgot. I'm sure some of you saw rumblings in the media about Sam Adams with a proposal of emergency sheltering plan for up to 3,000 folks. That's more of like a FEMA response with the National Guard, et cetera, et cetera. I want to say, and this is my opinion, that's just Tiffany Hammer, not a board member, but we are such a crisis right now. And the only, just to give you perspective right now, for the Safe Rest Villages, there are no Safe Rest Villages. They promised them last year, and we still haven't seen any. And the only one that's in our southwest quadrant for our neighborhood is the 2300 NATO sanctioned camp, and they're still dealing with permitting issues, and that will be turned into an LGBTQ, and I can't remember the last acronym for that camp. So it does not alleviate the other 1,300 people standing behind that camp. So sadly, I'm worried that the sanctioned camp situation is too slow. I'm sorry, Safe Rest Villages are coming too slow. They're too small, and they don't address the actual crisis. So when Sam Adams comes up with a proposal, I kind of like it when someone comes out there just to propose something. I know that Portland's humane. We would never allow horrible things to happen to people, but we shouldn't allow people to die on our streets and suffer and not have adequate connections to resources to make it so their lives are improved and safer. And so there in the nutshell is Tiffany Hammer's personal opinion. So when you watch these articles, please have your thinking caps on and your unbiased opinions and just soak it all in, because we are in the downtown area and we are seeing a lot of people that need somewhere safely to go. And I know that the county was supposed to come up with more shelter beds, 400 extra shelter beds. Where are they? So let's just keep an eye on it. And that's what our Goose Hollow neighborhood does. We keep an eye on it. And then I'm going to switch. Does anybody have any questions about what I just said?
Tiffany?
Oh, yes.
Tiffany, I have some questions. There was a talk about the convention center and trying to have some shelters there. Whatever became of that?
Now there's so many different conversations swirling around. The convention center is actually hosting the Portland Auto Show this coming week. I'll be there because, you know, I like autos. And I also like electric cars too. And I like bicycles, but bicycles get stolen around here. So I think I'll go with the electric car. So the convention center is off the table. They are used for cooling and warming respite, but the expo center is the one that we've been kind of keeping our eye on. But at the end of the day, I was really hoping for Commissioner Hardy's PBOT area to do safe parking villages programs. That's to help people pull in, get some respite, get some help, make a connection. That hasn't happened either, because that's more of the expo, you know, like dedicated areas for people who are living in their cars to be at, instead of our neighborhoods where they don't have adequate resources to get connected. There's other areas swirling around too, but nothing is coming into fruition. So I say, keep your eyes on your elected officials. We need help now. The only thing the county has put out there was I think the Arbor Lodge emergency shelter up in North Portland. I did call that. It's got a 3-month waiting list. It's locked up. Yeah, and actually it's not completely full. The problem is the reservation system, where I say you go out to dinner, you put your name and your phone number on, and you make a reservation, and then you just walk off, and then it gets hung up. And that's the problem with the county shelters right now, is beds go unused at night because they're waiting to find that person that put their number and name in. And that system to me is archaic and not working for our crisis. But the Greyhound station does that as well in downtown. But there's ways, like for myself and the community members, we're trying to work around those situations, right? It happens. Systems are slow and wieldy, and we just have to be creative to figure out how to get around that. But the Arbor's emergency shelter said, please don't bring anybody from downtown. We would like to focus on North Portland. So why don't you focus on down there? So I was like, wow, okay. So that just shows you how, and that's my personal opinion when I call there often to figure out what's really happening at the ground level. So I don't know. The post office site, I know people for Portland just put out a memo this, like today, actually hours ago, and said, oh, we're just going to put everybody at the post office and this will help. No, the post office is actually getting torn down in a few weeks. That is not a viable option. And it's going to go under construction and road redevelopment over there. So I think people so badly want a place for people to go, but they just don't want it next to them. So I'd say Old Town, and the post office site is right across the street from Old Town, where the Sanction Camp is, and the Greyhound facility, and TPI and Harbor of Hope is right there. I'd have to say, please give Old Town respite. We already have so many people over there. We can't afford to always put everybody all in the one spot, because you probably saw victimization and homicide is an all-time high in Old Town. And every 7 days we see someone stabbed, shot, or killed now. So we need to give people respective space, and adding an extra sanction camp or village right there is probably not ideal right now. So there's my personal opinion, Tiffany Hammer speaking to all of you. But I will go into our public safety meeting, and I'll be a little bit more Tiffany Hammer, Goose Hollow Public Safety Chair Representative. We did not have a safety meeting this month because it was supposed to be yesterday, but I postponed it because our respective neighborhood, downtown neighborhood association would like to share with us. And they're trying to confirm their guest speaker, and I think it might be next week or in the next 10 days. So I would love to send out a new invite to all of you for a really good guest speaker. I know they're trying to line up someone that could speak to us on the drug crisis and what we're seeing out on the streets. That's the P2P meth and the fentanyl blues. And if you don't know what fentanyl blues is, it's those blue pills that are starting to take craze in downtown Portland. I wouldn't be shocked if we see less hypodermic needles on the ground because the blues are cheaper and create a better high situation, and they don't require a needle. So people are packing those around, and everywhere I go on the street, I hear, "Do you have blues?" And I'm like, wow, that's where downtown's at now. So anyway, that's probably a good thing for hypodermic needle pickups in Goose Hollow, because I noticed that the solve for the monthly cleanups we have for Sulphur for downtown, where we do clean up those hypodermic needles, didn't happen this month. And I left a message with Solve, couldn't figure out why we didn't have our monthly cleanup. And that includes Waterfront, downtown, Goose Hollow. But Old Town's going to have a Solve cleanup next Wednesday. If you want to join in with me, I'm one of the team leaders over there Wednesday from I think it's like 9 to 11:30. If you want to get your clean on over there, we need all the help we can get over there. So, but Goose Hollow, if it's looking trashed out, let me know. It looks pretty good out there, right? Looks pretty good. So I will let you know about that safety meeting with our neighbors downtown. But in the meantime, I'm going to look at my notes here so I can stay on track. We did, for the safety and livability team, or I guess it's me and Linda, we did get an email from a gentleman by the name of Patrick, who inquired about, he was frustrated with PGE granted permits to close Southwest Clay Street and Market Street between 14th and 17th. He felt that this took up about 90 parking spaces for the PGE electrical work, and he thought it was frustrating, and he felt like it added to congestion and parking issues. Honestly, this is the only person I actually invited this guy to our meeting tonight so he could voice his own personal concerns. He never got back to me. He looks like Patrick is from Oregon State University. He's going to school for a civil engineering degree. I did ask him, I'm like, are you in the Goose Hollow neighborhood, or is this a school project? What's going on here? And so if you have any issues with that PGE thing, would you guys let me know for feedback? I did notice they were putting up, and Eric Simon's on this call, 2 major light poles on the 405 and the 26 freeway. And honestly, it's kind of dark over there and scary, and we could run over unsheltered people. So maybe that's a part of the safe freeway program. I don't know. But Bridget, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to contribute. It's right outside my door, and there was notice of that for days and days, if not weeks prior. So they really did their due diligence
Okay.
to notify folks.
I will let this gentleman know that. That helps me. Bridget, did anyone else was impacted by parking or PGE light poles or what have you? Okay. I think I'm the only one because it's right in front of my place. I don't mind. It was really dark anyway. But I do, Sherry, I'm channeling your bird concerns about lighting, but it was really dark over there. And I think they knew it too. So safety first. The next one is our respective neighbors, down Northwest District. They joined in on a presentation on Portland Street response. Yay, we're finally kind of slowly going towards the direction of a citywide expansion for Portland Street response, March 28th. That'll be 7 days a week from 8 to 10 o'clock at night. But the problem is they're short-staffed and they're hiring issues, and that kind of seems like everything with police and mental health services and Project Respond. I don't know, but looks like they're going to go to City Council, which they're going to do a budget ask this spring, which all of you, for me, I always pay attention to the city's budgets because that means that we should ask for what we need in our area, and they're going to ask for more money because they need to expand their teams. So I don't know what the reality of this will look like for us. But anything is better than nothing, right? And I do know that the police officers in Central Precinct downtown area, they were hoping for an expansion of 80. I think they only got maybe 2. That's looking pretty grim. I did ask about the unarmed PS3 officers instead. They've been granted funding, so we should see by they wouldn't give me a date or time, but I was like, is it by the end of the year where we're going to see more PS3 officers out there, which could help with more of our livability crimes and reporting? That's a good sign. We're not sure about the date yet. So good things down the pipeline. And in speaking of pipeline, regards to mental health, until we get Portland Street Response, Blanchet House in Old Town, requested to the county. They got funds to help with 2 peer advisors that would specialists that would go out helping people before they escalated into a mental health crisis. Unfortunately, they were not able to fill that position, and now they're going to have to resubmit and ask for money again. Yeah, so we're so begging for people to help us, staffing issues to help with our mental health crisis in downtown, but it's just nothing seems to be coming in fruition. Something else that gives me a glimmer of hope is the Clean and Safe program that helps with the 213 blocks of most of downtown, or if not all of downtown and Old Town, Chinatown, is going to have a new private security contract going out. And so by May, you're going to see new Clean and Safe security based on the new criteria based on the city, and also CHOW team workers. Those are designated staff to go out there and help with the, mental health de-escalation. And I'm once again, I trust that will come on schedule versus the PSR and or the other, the Blanchet House. So all we want is to help our people out there struggling right now with mental health connections. But I say, if you see someone out there right now, please call Project Respond, cross your fingers, hope like this, and hope someone comes out and helps the person that's struggling, and or call 911, and they will come out to de-escalate, hopefully. The next one is PSAC. I am the co-president of PSAC, but when I go there, I'm just the Goose Hollow resident on my own volition. But February 8th, we hosted the sheriff candidate position. That's where Mike Reese will be stepping down. And that's a big, big position to fill for Multnomah County. I call it the 4 legs of justice for us. And the jails are very important, and our sheriff's department. So it's under Sheriff Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell and Captain Derek Peterson. I actually have the Q&A session from that. So if you guys want the questions that were asked of the candidates, I can provide that to you offline. Just let me know. It was fascinating. The next PSAC meeting will be March 8th. We're going to be hosting the chair, Multnomah County chair position. That's currently Chair Kafori's position. And we have 3 candidates going for that. That's Commissioner Myron, Commissioner Jayapal, and Stegman, and that's going to be fascinating. I will also try at that meeting to host the DA's office. They came out with new dashboards for our crime statistics. If you haven't already seen that in the news, they put out what they're prosecuting, so you get a better understanding of where the prosecution is falling on. Like, bias crimes are big right now, I guess, and they got a new dashboard. Hate crimes and that kind of stuff. And so look up on there, because I always think to myself, what are they prosecuting? Let's look at that. So if you'd like to know what they're prosecuting and get a lesson from the DA's office, reach out to me for March 8th. And where I'm getting closer, because you know me, I could talk a lot. I want to say that in regards to radio cabs in our neighborhood for our unsheltered folks, for relocations, I put the $100 check that Bridget gave me for refund last month for jackets. Remember, it was jackets and coats, but I managed to get a lot of great donations, save that $100. Thanks, Jerry. And I put it on the radio cab credit, and it looks like so far, I think 1 or 2 radio cabs went through. So that's a good sign for our neighborhood. I encourage the other neighborhoods of downtown areas to do the same thing as Goose Hollow and Old Town that's downtown, and said, open up your radio cabs, because our communities have unsheltered people that need to get safely connected and relocated out of our communities. And this is the only thing that works right now until things are, the city and the county put together better strategies. And regards to, it looks like that might actually be it. Any questions for me?
I have a couple questions about, I had heard about a pilot program where neighbors actually take into their homes unsheltered folks, you know, say for example, like in Goose Hollow, someone might have a house, but their kids are grown and they've got extra bedrooms, so they house people. Can you shed some light on that, where we are with that project?
Yeah, actually that's called Home Share of Oregon. And I think it's a Homer, don't quote me, but I think it's a Homer Williams project. I love this vision. And it's actually not unsheltered people you invite in your home per se. It's actually people that have been vetted through the system. And what they do is they create a database of people that have extra rooms available and people who are desiring rooms. And then they do that whole, you know, finding all the right people and making the connections. And actually, I'm fascinated by this plan because if we go at that pace with home share, we could actually house a lot of people with that model. It's super cool. So if you do have extra rooms available, please go to home share. At this point with our unsheltered crisis or our housing crisis or affordable housing, whatever, I should stop saying crisis because we're starting to become sensitized in Portland to all of the above, but there's so many different strategies. So I love them all at this point, but we just got to do something and lead and go forward. Yeah, anybody else have a question?
Tiffany,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Tiffany, you mentioned that you have a Q&A link or something from the sheriff candidate discussions. Is that something that you can send to me and then I can put it in the minutes as a link or as a document?
Yeah, Scott, is it okay if I send you the minutes off of that meeting? Would that work? Or can I send it to the Goose Hollow board? Would that work? And we just cut and paste it, or how's that?
Why don't you go ahead and just send it to the board, and then David can just integrate, you know, whatever he feels is the important part so that we can capture.
Great. And actually, speaking of these minutes, these are great minutes, you all, because there's a section in the Peace Act minutes that's called Take for Action in Portland. Right now you can connect to People for Portland, send a video to your elected officials, or write a trash survey. Beacon Village, which is a sanctioned village in Southeast, is a friend of mine who runs. He's looking for donations, and this is those small alternative shelters that work in neighborhoods. And these are the kind of models that I really appreciate because they are ran just so efficiently, the smaller ones. There's also the Portland Charter Commission, and I know Vadim is, there he is right now. We have those links to the February 15th and 23rd, which is actually, Vadim, do you want to talk about charter reform?
Yeah, that's why I was late to this meeting. We had a charter reform meeting where we heard public testimony, as well as we had some subcommittee reports that came out. It's really interesting. We might have the most unique form of government in the whole United States. My comment was, is the recommendations that are coming down, have these been tried anywhere else in the United States? And the feedback I heard was maybe Germany or some other place has a similar thing going on. So keep tabs. March is going to be a wild time in the Charter Commission meetings. I'll have more feedback in the March Goose Hollow meeting, hopefully for you, when we have a few more coming together of minds there. But right now it seems to be some form of strong mayor system, but also the mayor would have less authority than he does or she does now. The mayor would hire a chief administrative officer, which they'll call a city manager, because more people that testified want a city manager, but the thought is maybe they don't understand what a city manager is. So if we just call it a city manager, that's good enough, which I don't understand. And then district voting with multi-member districts. That's not really been tried in that sort of thing anywhere else, but it might bring in more people to the voting booth. No primaries, just a general election. And there's a lot of other caveats. So even though the mayor would hire would be able to propose the chief administrative officer, city council would still need to vote to authorize it. And then if the mayor tried to fire them, city council would have to approve. So I'm not sure what the mayor's role really is. A lot of new ideas have been brought out today. And I'm trying to keep on top of them, but also be able to make it into something that people will understand when it comes to November and they have to vote for these sort of things. Hopefully we'll be able to work through those in maybe the one more meeting that we have before we have to have consensus on that kind of stuff. So it's really fun.
Great, thank you, Vadim. I don't know if Laurie or I know Linda, you had sent an email recently about the PDX reporter data that you've been tracking. I don't know if you'd want to say just a brief word about that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was just curious about the PDX reporter data. And so I decided to do some data analysis to try to identify trends. You know, one of the things that I have a question on my mind is, you know, how do we know that the city is doing better? I mean, you know, Tiffany's got the tent count. You know, how do we know that trash is getting picked up and people are being, you know, number of camps are being reduced? And it's still a work in progress, but I do have some initial results. The first result is PDX Reporter works. If you look at the data, you see that it really defines the actions of the city in terms of campsite assessments and cleanup. They're usually delayed by 1 or 2 weeks, but so we should get it out out to the neighborhood to use PDX Reporter to report camps, because it really does drive what the city does. The other thing, I try to determine whether we're seeing an increase in the number of camps that are removed and ones that are cleaned up. We don't know where these people are going, but the trend is a positive one, but it's really slow. So next month, I'm hoping I'm gonna try to use some different tools so I can get some projection timelines that will determine, like, you know, how long will it take to get down to 100 camps? You know, is it going to be 2 years or is it going to be 10 years, you know, with the current progress? So that's just what I did. That's just playing around with the data.
So Linda, I just went to the pdxreporter.org website. It looks like that you need to log in. Is there anything else that you need to do, or is there a reason why you need to log in just so they can attach a report to a certain account?
No, this is the, you know, the link that I can send out a link to one of the reports, the link that Tiffany sent out. Every week they report the number of reports that were reported through PDX Reporter, the number of camp assessments they made, the number of camps that were cleaned, the number of actual camps that were reported in those reports, and the number of camps that were removed. And it's public information. You don't need to log in or anything. It's just weekly data. But
hey, Linda, thank you for doing that. That's actually on the link in the agenda for Goose Hollow. It's the Hucker link, and it says January 31st to February 6th, and it goes received 951 new campsite reports. But you know what it doesn't? You know what lacks transparency is how many people were offered a shelter option in this. And I asked the director of Hucker, I said, how many people are actually getting relocated off the street, right? Instead of just sending them one block down. And they did not know. But yet they can track all this. So I'm sitting there going, whoa, that's not trippy. You can do all this, but you don't know anything.
Right. It's kind of not complete. And all I did, Scott, is I just went to that website and I recorded all the data starting in August of 2019. So they've been reporting that information. And if we can make a recommendation for additional information, Tiffany, I think that's an excellent one. We should. I think the city, if this is an urgent thing, they should have some good measurement tools to show that progress is being made. So maybe we can help with that.
Good. Well, it's great to have an analytics person on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a curse.
It's a good thing. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, or contributions before we move on?
I just have one question about Tiffany. You know, you were following all of the fires. Could you give us a little bit of an update about the fires in Goose Hollow? I've been really concerned about some of the fires that people our unsheltered folks are creating near trees and businesses and whatnot.
I remember this last month too, and this is positive information. We have seen less fires, explosions in Goose Hollow neighborhood for the last couple months, and I'm just thankful. We are coming up on warmer weather as we approach spring, and for some reason we always see fire explosions in the summer warmer weather. So if anyone can figure this out, I don't know, but I'm kind of bracing for that moment when we start to see that again. But yeah, I'm just most thankful. I actually ran into the head of the union for the Fire Bureau today, and I was like, hey, yeah, So actually, there is a report out, and Vadim, you might have seen it across your desk. It does show that Stata came out and said of all the fires in Multnomah County, majority are of the unsheltered campers. So I'm hoping that they will come together with some kind of solutions. I'm not saying unsheltered campers are bad or evil, but data's data, and we need to figure out how to keep them safe and our neighborhoods safe too. So I'd like to see actual interventions from the Fire Bureau. And I think, isn't Hardesty the commissioner over that bureau? So we should probably write a letter to her and say, give us some interventions there, because we're going back into fire season, and we probably all know that it's mild weather, and we need to protect our vegetation and not do what we did last year. And do you all remember last year? I think a fire every 7 days, and we were just hot. And I don't want to be hot again. I want to be Goose Hollow. So thank you.
It's very important, especially as I start clearing the freeways and people are going to move into some of the green areas, perhaps around us. There were 2,000 fires last year, 2,000 responses from the Fire Bureau to encampment fires last year, and 40 buildings that caught fire because they were next to encampments that had fires. I remember certainly in Goose Hollow, there was a fire that I drove by, but I think there were several that I might not have driven by as well, including the Collins Circle and places like that where you're still seeing the remnants. So we need to keep an eye on that.
All right, great. Well, so moving on to committee reports, we already heard public safety, parking, and transportation. So the Stadium Oversight Committee, Jerry had to step out, but he did go ahead and post his brief report in the chat. And David, I don't know if you caught that. You can basically just kind of cut and paste that. And there is a oversight committee meeting next week. It's going to be over Zoom. You need to register in advance in order to attend, but the link is in the chat. So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the Stadium Oversight Committee and what issues it's having to deal with, then feel free to go ahead and attend that meeting. All right, planning and zoning. We did have a planning meeting earlier this month, and the sole topic was whether to appeal the Madera, Maine project all the way up to Luba. As you may remember, we finally got a disposition of the case in front of City Council. City Council rejected our appeal, so the next step would have been Luba. And for various reasons, which I won't go into any detail here, but we did make a discussion on the costs, the hours that would be necessary for investment, our chances for success, and other issues. And we did hold a vote. Vote was 8-3 against appealing to Luba. And so the deadline passed, and now the project is officially moving forward. I am actually not the one that has the most information about the future of this project, because Judy sent me a lot of information that I didn't know. So if she's still online and would like to talk about some of the new information, I know that she is not on the board, but I think hearing it straight from Judy's mouth might make more of an impact. Judy, are you there? And is that something that you can do? If not, then I'll just go ahead and announce what I learned from you. Not hearing from her. What I learned, I think she learned this from listening in on the MAC annual meeting, in which they stated, and this, I think the MAC annual meeting was February 2nd, they stated that construction is going to start this summer, is what they were saying. Construction is going to start this summer. but a lot of things need to happen between now and then. Judy, hello.
Hi.
Are you able to go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the Madera, Maine update?
Yes, and it's hardly an update. It was not the MAC annual meeting. These are simply, what I wrote were simply comments that came from people that reported them to me. So one was a case where a MAC instructor, and I see that Dwight Terry isn't here anymore.
So I did ask Dwight if he had anything to add on the Madera, Maine project, and I don't know if you know this about him, but he owns a funeral home, and he was on the board at the MAC, and he has unfortunately been incredibly busy for, I think, reasons that you can guess, and which is an unfortunate situation. I guess it's good for business, but it's an unfortunate situation for a lot of families. And so for that reason alone, he has been kind of disconnected from the Madera, Maine project. Honestly, I thought that he was online so that he could share some information from us, share some information about that project that he, from the MAC's point of view, but he said he doesn't have any new information. So everything that you shared with me, Judy, is really what we're going to have to go on. But it sounds like that it's almost hearsay rather than from managers at the MAC.
Truly hearsay.
Okay.
Both things that one of them was a rumor. No, one of them was a MAC instructor telling her class that she had been told by her supervisors that her parking on block 7 wouldn't be available after groundbreaking, which might be in the summer. So that's all it is. It was an instructor telling students who happened to tell me this story.
I see.
The second one was 2 MAC members talking in the 1891 bar, and one said to the other that he had heard that the developer had sold the rights to another developer. So I don't know what that means, but in the meantime, people have asked me questions about what's going on. So I contacted Ben Nielsen at the Bureau of Developmental Services, who's the one that sort of moderated the whole hearing design business, and asked him how the neighbors could track the progress, since no one seems to tell us anything. And so he gave me a link to the permit process for the city. And actually, if you wanted the information, I think I can just forward it, couldn't I? There's some specific information that he gave. Anyway.
Yeah, so one of the things that you can do is go on Portland Maps, and you just go portlandmaps.org maybe, and it brings up almost like a Google map, and it's divided up into the little plots of land throughout the city, and you can just kind of click on one and find out all sorts of information about who the owner is, what the assessment is on that property, and also things like the zoning of that property, but also maybe more importantly for this is what permits have been issued for that property. So you can kind of track major permits going on in the block 7 property, which ones have been submitted, which ones have been approved, and so forth, and you can kind of track the activity on that particular block to see what's going on. And I believe that's what Ben Nielsen was referring to.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The major takeaway for me was that there are a lot of permits they're going to have to get. And I don't know how fast they can act. I guess but the permit process sounds complicated.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to do. People have tried to, MAC members have tried to ask MAC administration about this and they get no response.
Well, it seems to me, just reading, maybe not even between the lines, but just seeing all the activity going on and the permits that are still being applied for, and then Ben Nielsen's information that he's provided us, that work is still ongoing, charging forward on that property. So it's not going to be like a press blocks residential project where it just kind of stopped all of a sudden. So, there are quite a bit of hoops that they would need to jump through and before they start construction this summer, if at all. And one of those elements is buying the additional air rights from
Yes.
a distressed historical property. And Ben Nielsen gave me a link that I did not even know existed. It's a new link for basically a map of the city, similar to Portland maps, but highlights all of those properties that have signed a FAR transfer throughout the city. And so eventually that's going to appear for this project, Madera, Maine. And one of the things that we discussed is ensuring that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, because it's going to be very complicated to find a historic property that hasn't been seismically upgraded in order to buy these air rights. And that property needs to sign a contract with the city that states that they will in fact make the investment over time to improve the seismic structure of that historic property. So again, lots of things that need to happen before the property, before construction starts on Madera, Maine, but it looks like it's continuing to move forward. But we've seen this before, even with the press blocks project. There were lots of permits being applied for, and then it just kind of stopped. So anything could happen.
Thank you.
Any questions on Madera, Maine? Okay. You may have noticed for Lincoln High School that project is really coming along. They've taken out both cranes now, which is pretty incredible. So it's looking closer and closer to finish. I don't know what your feelings are about that completely transformed corner with the new apartment complex across the street and now Lincoln High School, but it certainly looks very different than it did before. Absolutely. And just to remind people that construction on the school is going to probably end around May or possibly June. Administration is going to be moving in over the summer. And then in September, or I guess late August, they're going to start the school year in that new school. And then they're going to start tearing down the old school and building the field where that is. And that's about it for the planning and zoning report. Does anybody have any questions about what might be going on? Oh, there's one more thing, and that you may have noticed on Alder that there's some deconstruction happening of a building a block away from the art tower. And that was an approved project from years ago that looks like it's just now being constructed. So that'll be, I forget, like maybe seven stories tall, 8 stories tall, and another apartment complex that has kind of a mid-century modern look to it.
Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
You know, thank you. You know, that wonderful Mac stop right by the Mac Club was closed, and we all were sad to see it go. One of the arguments that we testified before TriMet that we have all these projects coming on board, and they closed it, and you know, you're going to have people young people needing that the Macs to get to school, to come home from school. You're going to have people living in those apartments. I mean, what do we do now? I mean, because we're going to have a need for the transportation, I'm assuming. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is one instance where our interests and the MAC's interests align, right? Because the MAC kicked in $250,000 to get that stop put in so that they could have easy access of their employees to the Multnomah Athletic Club. And so the MAC is very interested in having that stop be a continuing stop just as we do. I think the city's argument is that there's a stop, just a block up the street. There's another stop like 2 or 3 blocks before that, closer to the zoo. And so it shouldn't be that difficult for someone to just kind of ride an extra block or get off a little bit earlier than they do. I suspect, though, as you do, Sherry, that, once that part of the neighborhood really gets filled in, then the city, might take another look at it. And if not, I'm perfectly willing to take that bronze goose off their hands and put it in my yard if they're not going to be using it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Can I just say something? I keep going in my mind back to Tiffany and about her unsheltered people that she's, my next door neighbor, by the way, refers to Tiffany as Saint Tiffany. Chris and Amy, our next door neighbors, because of her involvement with these unsheltered folks and ministering to their needs and whatnot. Okay, so they're going to be taken off the major roads and moving into the neighborhoods. Is there any attempt to put up porta potties or anything like that? I'm just imagining a really gross situation if this does not happen. I mean, these people are living there. There's no showers. There's no toilet facilities. I mean, help me out here. What do we do?
This is where you get your email out, your pen and paper out. You start calling up in your elected officials, maybe Dan, Ryan. Yeah. And actually all of them, just go ahead and let everybody know because they're all a part of this. Like I said, each one of them can do a little bit of something to help this unsheltered crisis. But in regards to the bathrooms, the hookup already has all the toilets out there. Yes, the freeways have been used as constant toilet use. Yeah. And so if they don't have access to the freeways to go to the bathroom in the privacy of those bushes and what have you, I don't know what to say. I mean, you'll probably be like Old Town Chinatown, feces on every sidewalk. And every day when I walk over there, I have to literally step over many piles of human feces. And business doorways will probably be used as access points. That's kind of how it goes. And so I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but that's kind of that, with Goose Hollow, we had all the vegetation in the freeways, and that kind of was, if you ever step behind there, you'll see it's a source of a bathroom area. Yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to recircle back on this. And I'd like to see how long it takes for our area where they start moving. We'll have to wait and see. So let's probably not get super scared quite yet. I'm watching the other areas that are currently being posted right now to see kind of what happens. I think the Rose Quarter areas right now getting cleaned up. Delta Park, they started moving people in Delta Park. I'd love to see what North Portland neighborhoods start feeling like, hey, we got a lot of people here. Where are they going to go? Oh, our neighborhoods. Oh, got it. So let's see what happens. Let's see how this pans out in the next 30 days.
All right. We're already going late, so I just want to move on to Neighbors West Northwest report. It'll be very quick. Just the high-level summary is that Mark Sieber, who's the executive director, has been for the past 25 years. He's been planning to retire for a while now, but because we don't have a replacement executive director, he has stayed on for a few months until that transition can take place. But his last day for sure is going to be at the end of March. So again, Mark Sieber, who's been there for 25 years, the executive director, is leaving. There is a search committee to try to identify an appropriate replacement, and we're just going to move on. The other things that Neighbors West Northwest is working on are somewhat non-neighborhood related because they involve complaints and other things like that that we're dealing with. And I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it's distracting us from the primary mission of Neighbors West Northwest of supporting the neighborhoods. So they're going through a strategic planning process to try to identify, major kind of thrust of values of the organization so that we can concentrate our efforts in those fields, and that's ongoing. It's been delayed. It should have been done by the end of last year, but because of all of these disputes, we're continuing. So I'm sure nobody has any questions, but in case you do, I'm open to receiving them and answering those that I can.
Scott, can I piggyback off of the Neighbors West Northwest. I was at the annual retreat meeting because I think you were out of town, and they had an in-person and a Zoom option. I did the Zoom option. The meeting actually took place physically over at by St. Vincent Hospital area in one of those conference rooms in one of those buildings, and I Zoomed, but sadly the quality of the microphone was so poor in that room that there was 3 of us that Zoomed in and we couldn't hear barely anything. So I think I hung on for a couple hours, like would hear bits and pieces, but with my eyes, I saw what kind of excited me a little bit is actually seeing the neighborhood coalition, the representatives coming and actually seeing each other face to face. And that gave me a glimpse of hope that, we could actually build a new relationship. You've got your new president, you've got a few new fresh faces in the room to bring some positivity and hopefully move forward with some direction. I was impressed by Jessie Burke from Old Town. She's fantastic. She's great at facilitating as well. And the new president did a good job, but I couldn't really understand what was happening other than I could see camaraderie. And I think that's a good start, right, everybody? Right? Relationships, and then you can actually work on strategies, and we need more of that, Scott. So did you see the video by chance?
No, but I got a report of it, and you weren't the only one, Tiffany. Those that joined by Zoom had the same experience you did. It is less than ideal to hold those type of kind of hybrid meetings like that. But as you know from the governor's order, it looks like that we're going to start going maskless soon. So I want people to think about how we can safely and happily hold meetings where we will see each other in person. As far as I know, the MAC is still not holding these meetings. So if you have any other suggestions of locations where we can do, I would happily volunteer my house, but I'm not sure if holding a meeting over my son playing very loud video games would work very well. So I would be happy to hear what other people have in mind. Churches that we can meet in, other conference rooms, Alan's garage. I don't know really where we can go, but
I do know that the MAC is lifting their mask mandate. I think March 31st, which is the day that we no longer have to wear masks, at least legally.
Right.
So maybe they'd be open to that.
Yeah, I would hope so. In fact, it goes beyond no mask. It says that anytime that you have like a subcommittee at the MAC, that you can't mandate mask wearing, regardless of vaccination status. So even if you wanted to, so I sing in the Mellow Max, and singing is a spreader of germs. I mean, you're projecting. But even if we wanted to, and plus most of the people that we sing with are in their 80s, so they're in a group that is very vulnerable to any health issues at all. But even if we wanted to, we could mandate masks at our singing things once the MAC makes their decision. All right, well, I'm just going to open it up. Does anybody have any comments or something last to say before we end the meeting? All right, well, be thinking about where we can meet in person. Please let me know if you have an idea, because I desperately want to have an in-person meeting, because I think that would just be best. And if we can talk the MAC into supplying cookies, even if they can't host the meeting, then all the better. So great seeing you all.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you. It was a wonderful meeting. Thank you for your kind words about Bud Clark. It was very important, and we will continue these good feelings.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody.